Jason Cherot,
That's right.
director of Dandylions.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed here and for submitting your film to the
Thank you
Romford
so much
Horror.
for having me. Yeah.
Fantastic. Could you tell us a little bit about what the film is about?
Yeah, so I mean the film was really a project. So we got put into lockdown. I was in my house with my wife and my daughter, and unfortunately without my other half, which is Ed, on my film company. I wanted to make something, so got around. My wife and I wrote a story down just briefly involving the forest and my daughter, and it's quite simple. It has to do with Oberon, who is king of the fairies. It's from Midsummer's Night's Dream and a lot of other tales. And he is an entity that's lived in the forest and lost his fairies because the humans have invaded the forest and taken them slowly over, of course, a long period of time. And the idea is now he's seeing lots of people come back into the forest, because we noticed that, living in a forest, that in COVID people were taking to walking around. So we created the story to say, well, what would happen if he took back the children? Because one of the saddest things that's happened through the COVID period has been us watching. We only have one daughter, so Lily that you see, that's Catherine, that's my daughter, and it was hard for her. We really struggled to give her that kind of youth that she had, that we had when we were kids, that you couldn't give to kids in COVID because they weren't allowed outside, right? So that was kind of the impetus for it, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
Fantastic. Budget. Was there a budget?
No
budget
there wasn't
whatsoever.
a budget. So this was, again, it was a project. It was the kind of thing where there was a film festival that was doing a lockdown short, and I said, let's do it for nothing. And then I called Ed, who's, like I said, my other half of everything in filmmaking. And Ed was fairly confident. I have a Pixel 3 camera, that's what I was using as my phone at the time. My wife has an iPhone 10, so he said, between those two and a few rigs that we have, we should be able to do it no problem. So we used a gimbal on the Pixel 3, which means I was able to kind of do some really cool panning shots, which you see kind of at the beginning, a lot of voiceovers, those shots. But then with the iPhone 10, it was really good for the close-ups, because we got in, we had a microphone on that, and it made it really clear when it came through. So I was so impressed, you know what I mean? This is someone who doesn't have kind of that technical background in it, and I was so amazed what came through both. Yeah,
it's fantastic. And you spoke about the inspiration. What about the writing? Did you write everything for it?
Yes.
And so how long did that take? What's the process?
For me, writing's a relatively quick process. I'm a constant writer, and it's something for my production company, LVP, I'm pretty much the main writer. So I will usually create the concepts, and then we'll build out from there. This was one where, again, it's trying to use what you have near you. So, I had been walking through that forest and running through that forest for exercise for years. So it was kind of going back through there with a notebook and then thinking how would I tell this tale? I would say the thing that I always go for is simplicity. It's a short film, right? So you don't want to make it something that doesn't make any sense. And actually there was a 1-minute version that went in front of a couple different film festivals, and it was changed into the 5-minute version to kind of respond to some of the comments they had about the 1-minute version. So that's how it developed over time.
And the 1-minute version would have included most of the dialogue or some of the dialogue?
That's right. So it's easy to see the 1-minute version because, as I said, this is all self-edited by me. So it was pretty much my first real trip at editing. But if you watch where Lillian and I come on, so where Catherine and I come on and are saying, there's a voiceover that I put into that, but that is the first shot we ever did. And then it goes up to the point where she runs off into the forest. And before we get to those posters that you have, of the missing children. So we tacked on both those other parts later. And it was really kind of cool. It was the first time I was able to do that in film, and was really happy about it because it added more to the story that way.
Challenges? Any challenges, or was it fairly straightforward shoot?
Huge challenges. So,
right.
I'm a new filmmaker, right? So and I'm a producer as well. And the worst thing about being a producer is you always talk like you know way more than you do. So I was on the phone to Ed all the time. And there were a couple times I remember on the day, there were literally shots that I had set up because I had 15 shots I wanted to do that I hadn't even thought of how to do them. So when I looked at them, I said I'd scrap them because it was we'd just not be able to get that the way it was. I think that was part of the beauty of it, is we still got the finished project in the end, and that's what I loved about it. Is it was very down and dirty, very indie, very no budget whatsoever. But my family pitched in and Ed pitched in on this one, and we managed to get it done.
And the length of the shoot? Roughly how long?
About a half day.
Fantastic!
The edit, though, this is where indie filmmakers. This is where I'll warn you. The filming itself, so principal production, takes no longer than probably 6 hours in the morning out by the forest right around the corner from my house. And that was because we had mapped out exactly what we were going to do ahead of time. However, in post, I probably spent 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and that's total time. I spent a lot of time on this in post.
And the long shot as she's walking away, because that to me is actually one of the most memorable shots in it. What inspired you for that? To hold that shot with the music? I love how you
asked that, because it's talked about quite a bit. That was the shot that is the shot that Ed would say, that made me a filmmaker. That shot there because it happened purely by accident. We were leaving the forest, and I wanted to get some more coverage, which basically means I wanted to get some more footage that I could work with. And so she was walking through this milk thistle, I think she's walking through in that. And I shot it, and then we played it back, and it didn't look right. So it didn't end up in the 1 minute cut, because it was like, well, no. Then I slowed it down and put a vignette on it in the edit, and all of a sudden it just took on, this is why I'm getting goosebumps, it took on a different element. It started feeling differently. Then I found music I liked to it, and that was it. And that was like, that was kind of, that shot is the epitome to me of the short. Like, if you get anything out of it, watch that shot, because that's what made me a filmmaker. After that, that's what I wanted to do.
As a viewer, and having nothing to do with making of that film, I 100% agree with you. It was that shot that you come away remembering. That is the one that really, I mean, you remember the whole film, obviously, but that is the one shot that really, the fact that you had the courage to hold it and just let it go and let the music take you away and take her away, really. It's quite powerful.
That's the amazing thing, and I think that's where indie filmmakers really can come to their own. Like, I love the fact that made me feel like a filmmaker. Yeah. Just watching that for the first time in Final Cut Pro, watching that go through, adding the music. And I remember I called Ed like 2 seconds after, and I just said, you have to see this. I think we have a film now. Yeah. And it's just, that's the moment. So I love that you brought that up.
No, it absolutely does hit you. It's a very powerful shot. It's an absolute perfect decision, in my opinion. Future projects, what's coming?
Well, the biggest thing we've got going right now, we've got You Reap What You Sow, which is a short film I've written around, it's like a Thanksgiving short film. It basically is a revenge story being done as part of a portmanteau. So we're working with Hex Media on this. It's going to be 13 indie filmmakers making a long, like a feature film, each with their own part. It's going to be Lovecraft themed, so each one of us on that feature have to reference Lovecraft in some way. My story is roughly based on the Doom That Came to Sarnath. And I say roughly because, listen, if you read the Doom That Came to Sarnath, it's like Gondor. Like, it's a huge town, it's this big city, and Laurie gave me this one because he knew it was a challenge, because there's no indie budget that would ever be able to make that story. So I've adapted it. I've taken something from my own past and kind of put it in there and made it, I think it's really good. We're assembling the team now, and it's like herding kittens, I would tell you, to try to get everybody on board for this. But we're hoping to shoot in September, and then it should be out sometime next year.
Great, we look forward to it, and we hope you submit it to our festival.
Definitely.
One last question, nothing to do with your film. Can you give us a favourite film of yours?
I have lots. I guess I'll go at the moment. I am obsessed with The Love Witch. The Love Witch is a 2016 film done by Anna Biller. It is an amazing throwback to like 60s style horror in Hollywood. I have a big thing for that. I don't live in LA, I used to. Don't live there now, but I will always love that era of Hollywood. And this is a horror film that kind of plays into it. It also has this wonderful kind of like pagan element to it and feminist perspective that was unique to me. And that's why I saw it, probably a year ago now, and I've been talking about it ever since.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed and for submitting to the festival.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.